Well, welcome to the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal.
I'm Treacherous Trista.
And we're joined by Lou Simone, writer and director of Agoraphobia and a lot of other cool things. And it's good to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be on here.
Yeah, good to have you back. It was a few years ago.
Yeah, like when was the last time?
It was for 3.
Oh yeah, I guess that was a while ago.
Yeah,
well, 2 years.
You were actually on video, but I wasn't doing video yet, and so it's just audio recorded. But this time, we're all good.
Lucky me. Just when I really don't want to put on makeup and stuff, but okay.
You look great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I actually put perfume on too. I don't know if you can smell it.
Oh, that's funny. I do that as well.
Right? It's habit.
I'm the opposite. I'm glad no one can smell me. But I did walk like 6 miles before the show, so actually it probably is true. Very sweaty. But for people who don't know, can you give them an idea of what agoraphobia is about?
Agoraphobia is the story of a young woman who suffers from that mental illness. And so she's not able to go out of her house. And she inherits her father's house in the Keys. And she's all excited. She thinks this is going to be the perfect place to get over her fears. She's doing a type of therapy that's called now it's escaping me. But she ends up instead weird things start happening, and she kind of is stuck inside this house with what could be a vengeful spirit. And nobody wants to believe her because of her disease.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that inspired the story? The idea of agoraphobia, the ghost, or if it's a ghost?
If it's a ghost, right? Well, it was a mixture of things. Like I was looking to do bigger budget, single location, limited character story. Now I've become a master at doing those. I think they're all the same thing. I was on vacation in the Keys, and coming back up, I was looking at the beautiful homes, and I just thought, about the lucky millionaires that live there. And all I thought, a lot of them are elderly, because they're retired, Florida, and I thought, what a sad thing if they can't go outside and really enjoy this, this beautiful stuff that they're looking at every day. And I thought, well, I think there's a story in there somewhere, but what would be the thing? And I don't know, I thought of agoraphobia, and after that, it's just slowly but surely, just little pieces started coming together for the story.
What's kind of a weird coincidence is it took a few years, which we'll talk about, to get released here. Mm-hmm. But now that it is, like, it's a lot of that's topical, people being stuck in the house.
Yeah, somebody pointed that out. It didn't even occur to me when we released it that, we are all a bit agoraphobic at this point.
Yeah. So I mentioned it took it a few years to get released here in the States. Can you explain why?
It got released everywhere else in 2015. We had gotten picked up for distribution in 2000 for North America by a company based out of Canada. And we were all excited about it. And stuff just started going wrong. They weren't handling it the way I wanted them to. So I canceled the contract with them. It was about a month before they had scheduled it for release. And they were very kind to say, okay, just get out of the contract. I was at AFM a month later, and I'm pitching it to another Canadian distributor. And the guy's like, I just got released Tuesday. I was like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And he takes out his phone and shows it to me. He's like, here you go. I was like, so that started this whole, legal process. It was taken down, but by that point had been pirated. And it was in all the torrent sites and all that stuff. And it was just a nightmare. It had gotten relicensed to another distributor, and that distributor somehow didn't get the notice that it had been canceled and released it anyway. and then released it twice more after that. So we tried to negotiate it so they would release it properly. It just never worked out. We ended up having to file a lawsuit in New York federal court, which goes really slowly. So 4 years of being in litigation with them, with the distributors. And we also sued Google, Amazon, and Microsoft, just tiny little companies you might have heard of. So it was 4 years of a long, very painful litigation process. So
if you didn't, because people don't know you have a background in law before you got into making movies. If you didn't have that, do you think, I mean, maybe you don't even know, but do you think it would have been something you pursued, filing lawsuits against them if you didn't know, have some background in that?
I mean, it definitely helped, especially because I went to several attorneys at that point. I'm not an intellectual property attorney, but I went to several attorneys and they were telling me, oh, the most you'll get is $30,000. So that would have dissuaded me from filing. I did my own research and I found the case law that backed my case. And I took that to attorneys and I'd be like, okay, no, I can get more than that. So that's what helped, having that background, is to do my own research and not just take their word for it. It's hard. It was kind of sad to see how little attorneys who practice in that field on a regular basis still had no idea, because so few people actually sue for that, and the copyright law is very poorly written, and it limits the damages so much that it makes it sound like, you can only get, $30,000 in most cases. So finding case law that said I could get more than that really helped our case. So we ended up, settling. So after 4 long years, so, and, everybody's pretty happy, I think.
Yeah. This might be an obvious question because I would assume it's special for you to finally get the movie out, but what does that mean to you? 4 years going through all this and now the movie is out and people can watch it.
It's almost surreal though. I mean, honestly, I felt like it was never going to happen. There were so many times where I just felt like I just should just give this up because we're suing these huge companies. And they can outspend us, and I started out in litigation doing, commercial litigation. And I knew that our strategy, because we did defense, was just like run up the other guys, attorney bills so high that they don't want to continue it. So I knew that dealing with these huge companies, they could definitely, outmaneuver us, but we got lucky, I guess. Well, I mean, we had a really good case. I mean, there was really no defense to it at all. It was just a matter of figuring out the damages. And that was probably the trickiest part, because how do you prove damages on a indie film? You have no way of knowing how much it would have made, so that was the tricky part.
Yeah. Trista, do you have a question?
Yeah, this is such an interesting story. And I'm not sure it's a cautionary tale, because I don't feel like you really did anything wrong or could have done anything differently. But I'm wondering if you have maybe like the biggest lesson you've learned through all of this.
Oh my God. That's a hard part. I mean, we had done all our research. We had gone to, what I have always told everybody, don't just sign a distribution deal, make sure you contact people they've worked with before. We did all that, and everybody spoke really well of them. And I mean, one person did say, well, they've had a lot of turnover there lately, but I think that part is resolved. And that is actually what we ran into, was that they, every couple of weeks we were dealing with somebody new, which is why we pulled the contract. But I mean, you can't possibly know. I mean, I've had some sales agents that were great, and then all of a sudden one day stuff just started going wrong, It's so hard. I mean, indie filmmakers just have it so rough. I don't know that I have any lesson other than, I don't know, just stand up for yourself. Don't back down. I realize that most people are not in my position, like I actually came out of out of $20,000 out of my own pocket to be able to get a retainer to hire an attorney. And not a lot of people can afford that. But for me, it was worth it because it was like, when I go to people and ask them to invest in a project, they put so much faith in me that I couldn't just say, well, oh, sorry guys, you lost all your money. You know, I felt like I had to do everything I could to get that money back for them. And I was willing to do that.
When you mentioned, you know, suing, you know, big entities, and you thought, you know, obviously be times maybe this isn't worth them to quit. Did you ever think of you weren't going to make movies again anymore after this?
Yes, every single time. Every single month I go through that. Yeah, I honestly, I don't know how I managed to make more films after that, because it was devastating. But, you know, I call filmmaking this abusive relationship where, you know, you need to get out, but you keep going back for more, and it keeps beating you, but you keep going back for more. It's a terrible analogy, but actually very accurate.
Michael Epstein, a mutual friend of ours, he always tells me making movies is a terrible idea.
Terrible.
But he also loves doing it, so yeah.
It's terrible.
So thinking about like making the movie, since, you know, all this happened after, because I know just a year ago things seem so long ago during the pandemic. How long ago does it feel like making the movie? I would assume it seems like another lifetime or something.
Making that movie, Agoraphobia?
Yeah, Agoraphobia.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's already been 7 years. I mean, you know, from the actual film part of it, the filming part of it. I can't believe it, like time just flies, you know? But you know, it's funny because now when I watch it, I'm so detached from it because it's been so long, you know? So I can look at it and actually enjoy it now, where right after you make it, you think of everything you wish you'd done different and everything you should have done or not done, or if I'd only done this, if I gotten one more shot of that. Now I can just watch it and enjoy it because it's so long ago. And I've made so many more films after that, you know, so that's a good part.
Yeah. As far as casting the movie, what made Cassandra right for the lead?
You know, we were looking for somebody who had name. You know, we were very conscious of the fact that we had to sell the film after we made it. She had just finished doing Sharknado. So, and she was a pretty big part in that. And she is from South Florida, and we were filming in Miami. So it was like a very easy sell of saying, you know, come to South Florida. You know, she was living in LA at the time. Come to South Florida, visit your family, and make a movie while you're here, you know, kind of thing. So it was an easy sell. And she was pretty. She was good. She was very talented, and she totally got the role. I didn't get to do any rehearsals with her ahead of time, so I was a little worried about how she'd play it, but she was on it, man. She knew all her lines, and she just totally got it from the get-go.
And I'm always happy to see Tony Todd in anything, and not to take anything away from Candyman, because I love Candyman, but he's such a great actor, you know, in any role. So, you know, it's good when he has like an actual role and he's not just like a cameo in something.
I specifically wanted, you know, I wanted a horror icon, but I didn't want to do what some people do where, like, you know, they basically just have him walk in and say, hi, how are you? Or be like the guy at the gas station. No, you shouldn't go to the house. And that's it. And then they use the, you know, the picture on the cover. I really wanted like an actual meaty role, but one that could be shot very briefly. So, and then I also wanted people to kind of suspect all along that maybe he had something to do with what was going on. So I played on that a little bit. And so he was perfect for that, you know.
Now, what was he like to direct?
So easy. I wish everybody was that easy to direct. He was actually on set only one day, and he had 4 scenes to do, which is a lot. Especially that first scene when they first get to the house. That's like, a lot of people, a lot of shots, and, you know, a lot of happens right there. But he knew all his lines. He knew the character. He called me the day before when he flew into Miami and said, okay, tell me what I need to know about this character. And so we talked briefly on the phone, but after that, it was like, all right, we're on set. We have 4 scenes, probably about good 20 pages to shoot in one day. And he knew all his lines, was super amenable to anything I had to say. He was, I mean, he was just a pleasure to work with. Just super easy, super fun, funny, super funny. Like, he was cracking jokes the entire time. He was great.
Trista, you have a question?
I'm assuming you're a horror fan, so do you have a favorite horror film yourself?
Well, if you consider Silence of the Lambs, which some people don't, a horror film, that's my favorite. My second favorite probably being Nightmare on Elm Street, the 1984 one.
That's always
that one for sure is horror.
Yeah. It's always kind of a pet peeve of mine on when people start to argue like if what genre a movie is, because I never know like why does it really matter if it's thriller or horror. I mean, do you like it less if it's a horror movie or a thriller? I don't know.
I mean, it's definitely. I mean, there's. Yeah, I mean, guy eats another guy's face off. Seriously, right. How is that not horror?
Romantic
because comedy. It did well critically, so it can't.
That's very true.
Yeah, probably.
I think that's when people started to bring it up when it was up for all the Oscars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, they don't want to say it's a horror movie. Same thing with Get Out, I think, when it started to get all the acclaim. Now, how early on did you want to make movies?
Very late on. I mean, it wasn't even in my radar at all, I'll be honest. It just wasn't. I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. I was writing. I had a novel by the time I was like 16. So I always thought I was going to be a novelist. Went to college for that and got a bachelor's in English to be a novelist. I mean, at the University of Florida, they didn't have a creative writing degree, but so that was the closest I could get. And I did all the creative writing courses there. But honestly, it wasn't, you know, come graduation time, it was just, okay, what do I do now? I mean, I didn't want to be an English teacher or something. So I convinced myself. I went to law school in New York, you know, the mecca of publishing, that I'd write a great novel, but, you know, during my 3 years in New York, and then I would never have to actually practice law. That didn't quite happen. It was quite, you know, law school took a lot of my time. I didn't understand that. So, and then after graduating, you have that stress of paying back all those student loans. So went into practice, still thinking somewhere in the back of my mind, I would write this great, you know, novel, become, you know, whatever, Thoreau or whatever, and, you know, use my experience as an attorney to write a great novel. And then just met someone who was in or trying to be in the industry, and kind of inspired me to try screenwriting instead of writing a novel. And I loved it. I mean, I wrote one screenplay and I was like, why didn't I do this from the beginning? I mean, this is so much easier than writing an entire novel. And so started with that. And then just trying to get my stories out there is how I started actually making films, is because, you pitch your scripts to people, and it's really hard to get them done. So.
Well, what kind of decision is that, though? I think is, you know, if you're practicing law, to go to something that you have no guarantees that you're going to make it, or, you know, it seems like a big jump.
It was a huge jump. My mother still hates me for it. That's still my mother's biggest disappointment. Yeah, I mean, I still practice law, so okay. I still have that, but yeah, but it definitely affected my entire life. And there is not a day that I haven't questioned my sanity for having done that. But I know that the sense of fulfillment I get from filmmaking is just something that I've never found in anything else. And so even if, I don't know, 5 years down the road, I was like, okay, I did it. I don't want to do it anymore because it, it is stressful. I mean, look at this. I was in litigation for 4 years, for being sake. So it's not that it's perfect bliss all the time. So I mean, I may well, after a couple more, just be like, okay, I've done it. I had the experience, but I would still not regret ever doing it, because the reward that I felt at points where, like, you're screening your film in a film festival, or you get messages from people from around the world saying, hey, I just watched your film and I loved it. And you're like, wow, like something I did, somebody in Japan just, cared enough that they actually reached out to me to tell me they liked my movie, when seriously, like, I don't know, I would have never even thought of doing that, That's when you're like, this is the best, it's such a high.
Right. Yeah, I assume no one from Japan ever messaged you and said, I really liked that case you were in.
No, but, can you believe that?
Yeah.
Well, I that's not the kind of law I'll do. So
I was just being an idiot, but yeah. Trista, you have a question?
So you obviously specialize in horror. I'm wondering if you have any fears or phobias yourself that you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah, I have a terrible fear of flying, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's currently, I guess.
It's bad. I mean, it's under control now. I developed it after 9/11. And actually, a lot of what's in this movie about the treatment of agoraphobia is a real treatment that's done for phobias, and that's exposure therapy. Couldn't think about it before. I don't know why. And I did that. I didn't fly for like about 3 years, and I love to travel. So it was like killing me. I was just doing like road trips to places because I didn't want to fly. But that's, I knew I wanted to go back to, to Europe, and I wanted to see other places. So I found a therapist that did virtual reality therapy. And what they do is they put the goggles, the thing, the headphones, they sit you in a seat, and they simulate flights over and over and over again. And so, I mean, even though you're in a chair and you're perfectly safe, in a room, like they would have monitors on you and your heartbeat and your breathing and everything, you still would have like the physical reaction. It was crazy. And so, they teach you like breathing exercises and stuff like that to get you to relax. To the point where, I mean, I still hate flying. I really hate it. I lose sleep days before I know I have to fly because I'm really stressed about it. But at least I fly now, and I had, I couldn't continue not flying because I love to travel. That's like my biggest addiction, even more so than making movies.
How is the maybe I shouldn't ask you, but how has the pandemic affected that? Where are you going to be? Are you flying currently, and does that affect your fear of flying?
No, because my biggest fear was the fear of crashing. I guess maybe that's the correct way. That's the right phobia. It's not the actual flight; it's the fear of actually crashing and dying. So no, like I just went to Costa Rica in November. So I feel I've been kind of pretty careful with the pandemic, but not like too crazy about it either.
How much like research did you do for agoraphobia itself when you're writing the movie?
I did a lot, actually. I read up a lot on it. I don't know how people ever wrote anything before the internet, but
I don't know how people did anything before the internet. Yeah.
I did a ton of research on the internet, and then I went a lot on blogs and stuff like that to hear not just the main writers, but like the people's comments on it. Because that's where you get some really juicy ideas and some real feedback of what people who are living with it are really going through. I mean, some of it, you know, I had to, for dramatic effect, I had to like whatever create on my own, you know, because I mean, most agoraphobics are not really completely always at home, you know, like they do manage to go out once in a while. So, I mean, it depends, there's degrees of it. Not everybody is that extreme.
Like yourself with the fear of flying, you still live.
Right. Exactly.
Quiet times, yeah. How about finding a house to film it in? Did you already have the location, or was it someone's house?
We had originally thought of filming in LA, so we were going crazy, but just because we thought, okay, you know, we're going to be having Tony Todd and everybody lives in, you know, in LA, it'd be probably easier. But it was just so expensive, not only because people wanted a lot of money for their homes, but also because of the permits. And I was really, you know, a lot of people were like, oh, you don't have to get the permits, we can work. And I was like, that's a lot of money to put up, you know, we're going SAG. So you have to basically give your entire budget to a company to hold. So, you know, now if you get shut down because of you don't have a permit, that's it, you lost all the money. So I didn't feel right about that. Luckily in Miami, you don't need permits to film in a private home. So I started like just hitting up people I knew. Luckily, because I am an attorney, I knew a lot of people who had really nice homes, and I was able to, you know, to ask somebody I knew, and which was not always easy, you know, because he was staying at the house while we were filming. So it created a lot of, you know, tension, and we had to clean the house every night after we finished filming, which was really, you know, it just added a lot more stress than if it had just been, you know, an empty house somewhere.
Yeah. In the script, so the house that you found, did it have all the locations you needed from the script?
No, we needed to have, you know, we needed to have like some wilderness behind the house, you know, according to the script. So we ended up having to rent, it was actually a Girl Scout camp, which wasn't that far from the house. But that was a different location. And you know what else? Oh, and then one of the investors had this beautiful penthouse apartment in Miami Beach, and that's the final location in the film.
Were you living in Florida at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You live in LA now?
Well, technically, I guess Huntington Beach.
I was just gonna ask, when did you decide to move, you know, out to the West Coast?
Well, I was in Atlanta for a while, and I was there right after filming this, actually. I was in Atlanta until 2019. But, you know, I mean, you keep trying to expand and get better at your craft. And I really wanted to, the stressful part about filmmaking is actually the selling of the films. So ideally, I would like to get away from that. I mean, I produce by necessity, but I don't really love it. It's too much like practicing law. So it's the unfun part of filmmaking. So, I mean, ideally, I would like to get into doing it for other people and have them worry about the sales of the films. And unfortunately, you know, still, even with Atlanta, with the high market that it is for filmmaking, still writers and directors are being hired in LA and flown out there. So I needed to be here.
Yeah. Trista, you have a question?
Do you prefer to direct films that you've written yourself?
I've never directed something somebody else written, so I don't know how good I'll be at it. But yeah, I mean, it definitely helps when you're directing your own stuff, because my favorite thing is writing. Like if I could just write, I'd be the happiest person in the world. The good thing about directing, and don't get me wrong, I like the directing part of it too. And like now it's become very like a huge challenge for me, and especially to learn and to grow as a director. But the part I like the most is that then what you end up creating is exactly what you envisioned when you wrote it, as opposed to handing it off to somebody else and then getting something completely different, you know. I experienced that on my very, very, very first film. I wasn't even supposed to direct. I was just there as a writer. And then all of a sudden it was like, what is going on? I was like, no, no, no. And so I kind of stepped in. First, it was kind of like, you know, like, let me give you a suggestion. And before I knew it, I was like, you know, co-directing the film just because I had produced it. So I had some power. I was like, yeah, no, hold on. Let me stop this. So.
What was the first feature?
It's called The Awakened. It didn't go very far, and it was definitely it was my film school, I always say.
So would you say you learned to direct, you know, being directing, I guess? Yeah.
Absolutely. I had never been on a film set before. I knew nothing about directing. I knew nothing about filmmaking, and so I learned by sheer necessity, you know.
What would you say once you started to do it was like things that you didn't expect?
I mean, it's hard to say because it's not like I had any expectations because I wasn't planning on it. You know, it was just all of a sudden I was thrown in there, or rather I jumped in there just out of, you know, sheer necessity. But I didn't really have any expectations other than I wanted my film to look a certain way and for actors to say certain things, and all of a sudden it just wasn't coming out that way. And I started just by making suggestions, and later on I just kind of was more forceful about it. I've also have had my own practice for a long time, so I'm used to being the boss. So maybe that has something to do with it. I'm like a little bossy. I don't know, but yeah.
How about on the editing side? Are you really hands-on on the editing?
Yeah, very much so. I think I learned more about directing after sitting down with with an editor, and seeing how it comes together. Now it's like, oh, so I probably don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. So I'm editing as I'm filming because I already know what's going to go in the final cut, rather than shooting entire, you know, takes that I know are not going to ever be used.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that comes up a lot in the interviews, actually. People who either work on multiple parts of the movie, you know, just knowing like a little bit of this helps with another aspect of the movie making.
Yeah.
Trista, you have a question?
Yeah, you talked about shooting in Florida rather than LA due to the permit situation. I'm wondering, when you shot All Girls Weekend in Georgia, and that was mostly, you know, there was a lot going on in the woods. Was that more of a guerrilla shoot?
No, actually, we actually had permits to shoot where we were shooting. One of them was a cabin that had like an amazing amount of land. But we did have to have permits to shoot at a park where the ruins are. So I'm trying to think, have I done anything that was completely guerrilla? Probably the last one we made that we shot last year, 73 minutes that we shot. I mean, it was definitely put together last minute, so we didn't get permits, and we kind of bent some rules and some laws. We were a complete shutdown because of the riots. Remember after the Black Lives Matter riots were happening, so we were actually locked down, and we were filming in the Everglades just to avoid the cops. So
how far along is 73? How far along is that movie?
It's in post-production. It's like about to be finished, like any moment, but I've been saying any moment for like a month, so you know.
Right. Yeah. You know, you didn't know about filmmaking when you started to make films. How about the festivals? Did you have any experience with them before you had your own movie in a festival?
No, never been to one. Like honestly, the whole experience was so not at all something that I thought that a normal human being could do. Like to me, it was like big still. I didn't know about the whole indie scene. So I didn't think that average human beings could do this, because to me it was like a multi-million-dollar thing that only big studios could do. It was only after doing, you know, the first one that all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know, and I was surprised because the first one really didn't look all that great. And yet we went to so many film festivals with it. And I was surprised how well it did despite the limitations. But that's definitely one of the best parts. I like this one that we just finished, you know, from last year. We haven't submitted to film festivals precisely, and I haven't been in a hurry to finish it precisely because all the film festivals are online now, and I'm like, well, that kind of takes all the fun away. I mean, what's the point? For that, you know, we'll just put on YouTube and let people see it. You know, I mean, the fun part is to be able to attend in person.
Yeah. How helpful was that being on the festival scene? Because, you know, you meet a lot of people, and was that helpful for you as a filmmaker?
I mean, it's not helpful. I mean, I've not once gotten distribution from going to a film festival. Not once. I mean, and to be honest, unless you're going to be in one of the top ones, it doesn't really help you in terms of sales or anything like that, because, you know, they want to see Sundance and, you know, and Tribeca and all that stuff. And so if you're not getting into those, and I've never been so courageous as to, or maybe I'm just too logical, but I'm like, why waste money on submitting to those? I mean, the chances of getting into one of those is so slim. So I've never submitted to them. So it's only been helpful in that it's the kind of thing that inspires you to continue doing it, you know? And I've also made some incredible friends, you know, other filmmakers, and there's such a bond with people who have been through this experience, you know, like you, and some really good friends. I mean, people that even if I never make a film again, I know I will be friends with forever. It's like we went to a camp together or something.
Right. Yeah, honestly, it's the major thing I miss right now is going.
Yeah.
But of course, we want everyone to be safe and everything. But yeah, I do miss. Sophia Cassiola wanted me to ask, since it is St. Patrick's Day, do you have any thoughts on the Leprechaun franchise?
I've only seen the first one, so and I didn't think it was very good.
It isn't.
But yeah, I mean, it's one of those silly, fun movies you see once, and then
it's cool as the Leprechaun.
You store it away in your brain.
Yeah.
As Jennifer Aniston's beginning pre-nose job. That's all it sticks out of my mind.
We had to ask it since it was St. Patrick's Day. Trista, do you have a question?
You mentioned your biggest lesson through the litigation is just to stand up for yourself, which I imagine you already were pretty good at standing up for yourself. But I'm wondering if you have any other advice for aspiring creators.
I honestly, right now, the market is just in complete turmoil. You know, like everything that used to work before just doesn't work the same way. I can tell you from the release of Hazmat in 2014, that was, to now, sales revenues just have gone so down that it's really hard for me to give advice other than to say, if you're not going to have any name, then make it as cheap as possible. I mean, really, like $5,000, $10,000, you know. And if you have any kind of a budget, have a name. Like if you don't have a recognizable name, forget it. It's just impossible to make any money on films anymore. So it's not like Hazmat did so good. I mean, Hazmat was like on Redbox and it didn't have any names whatsoever. But just for the fact that it had, you know, the fact that it was horror and it had good premise, it was all over the place. I mean, we went all over the world with that film. But you can't, you know, it's really hard. The amount that we make per, you know, per movie now is so much less. Um, um, Although I have to say, the pandemic has been pretty good in terms of getting us a lot of views. So we've been, you know, making more money. But literally, I mean, you have to have millions of views to make any kind of money. And it's really hard because there's so much content out there. That how do you, you know, how do you even compete? It's just impossible. The fact that we make any money to me is still mind-boggling. Um, so I really hope that people go watch Agoraphobia, please.
Yeah. Hazmat actually was the first time I heard about you, was when they sent it to the show, you know, to talk about.
Yeah, that was, you know, that still has like a very special place in my heart. Like that's the first film that I did all completely by myself. And I did everything on that. You know, I mean, I've produced everything after that as well, but that one I produced by myself. And then it just did so well. I mean, it really, really did well. I wish every other film, you know, had done just as well, because it it was great. Like it made money, you know. I still make money off of it, you know. So
when you started to make films, how were you treated as a woman director? Were you treated any different?
when I first started, I would get stuff, reviews and stuff like that. I would say Mr. Simon or whatever all the time. It's like, oh, really? You know, you didn't never looked on IMDb to see that I have that's a woman. Okay. But in a way, it was good for me. Like, I really wanted to be judged on the quality of the work and not just on like, oh, you know, she's a girl. She did well for a girl. Like, to me, like the worst thing you could possibly is give me an award for like best female director. That's just painful. That's like saying, you know, you did good for a girl, you know? Um, so, so in a way, I didn't mind that people were confused. I wanted people to really just watch and, you know, and just judge it on its value. Um, but honestly, like I think in a studio level, it's a horrible system that's really so hard to break in to, and we're not giving any, you know, we're not giving any chance to work in that field. But in the indie level, we have so many supportive people. I mean, I honestly, I cannot complain. Like people like yourself and so many of my really good guy friends that have been so supportive and have been, you know, helping me along the way and helping spread the news about my films and stuff like that. So I cannot say that I've been at a disadvantage at this level. It's just breaking into, you know, going out of this and actually trying to make it in the studio level. That's almost impossible. It's just so hard, especially, you know, on top of that, I'm Latina. So it's not like, you know, I mean, there's less than 1% of the films, you know, in the studio level are made by women, you know, Latinas. So it's not a very good odds.
What was that experience like coming to America? You know, when I think you were 9, so you're pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was scary, you know. It's like I didn't speak the language, so I was so scared about everything. I knew one word in English, and that was fancy, so I mispronounced it on top of everything else. And and we had nothing. I mean, we had to start from scratch. We literally had only the clothes we had on. We weren't allowed to take anything out of the country. So for anybody, you know, listening to this or watching this, you know, it's Cuba. So, you know, you don't own anything. Everything's owned by the government. So you're not allowed, we weren't allowed to take anything besides just the clothes we were wearing and our papers. And my father had been a political prisoner. So we were, you know, we were definitely not liked there. We were seen as anti-government and we were constantly being harassed. So we were able to ask for asylum here in the United States. And I'm still, sometimes I think about it and how my life would have been had we not been able to come over. You know, it just would have been completely different. You know, I mean, the fact that I was able to go to one of the most prestigious law schools, you know, in this country, and go on to have so many things that I could not possibly have dreamt of. Like, it's not a reality for anybody, much less just an average person over there. So yeah, I still, sometimes I pinch myself, like, how did this happen, you know?
Once you come here, do you ever have any contact with any friends or relatives in Cuba? Or is that the last time you saw them?
Most of our immediate relatives came, you know, eventually at one point or another. Like we claimed them, or they came through other means. So I don't really have any close relatives over there. So I've never, and I was so little,
right.
You know, and like I said, we kind of have to live this kind of weird double life because you don't want to like advertise that you're anti-government. So once we left, we couldn't really reach out to friends. Like, we were at that point, we were outcasts, so we couldn't. I mean, there's a reason why they call it, you know, exiles, because you're seen as this horrible human being that, you know, it's a traitor to your country and all that stuff. So we couldn't really keep in touch with friends.
Yeah. Trista, do you have a question?
I mean, that's so wild. Thank you for sharing that. Do you find this is kind of a weird question, I guess, but do you find that any of that struggle inspires your work?
Not really. I mean, I am working on a script right now on the story of what it was like growing up over there, especially with my father's political leanings, because that's a crazy horror story of itself, but it's not a horror, you know, film. It would probably be the first flat out drama that I'll ever write, and probably the only one. But it's just kind of like it's such an interesting story, you know, thinking back about what our life was like. It's kind of surreal, like it happens to somebody else at this point, you know? So I really want to write that, but no, I mean, I basically grew up here, you know. Everything that happened before I was 9 is kind of like a blur a little bit. But I'm so American. I mean, I love football and, you know, and beer, and I went to college and, you know, here. So I feel very American. It's not, I don't have, even though I'm very much Cuban and very much Latina, and I like, you know, our culture a lot, but I can't really, you know, I mean, I grew up watching horror films here. Not over there, but here. And that and Scooby-Doo is probably the biggest reasons why the things that have actually inspired my writing.
I like that Scooby-Doo as an inspiration.
And I still love that. I could still watch Scooby-Doo any day.
Do you have a favorite character from Scooby-Doo?
Thelma, probably. I mean, she's that's just totally me, you know, strong, bossy, and skeptic about everything.
We saw the shirt earlier.
Yeah. That's it. Wait, hold on. Anybody see it?
Well, 73 minutes is in the works. The movie.
Yeah.
And you also saw Adam 6. How far along is that?
That's in development. So we had actually gotten the funding, and I was all excited to make it, and then the pandemic hit and the investors fell through. So we went from pre-production back to development. But I'm hopeful. I'm you know, now with things coming, it's a good film to be made during this, even during these uncertain times, because once again, this is a limited location film, even though this one has a much bigger cast. So
can you give us any of what Adam 6 is about?
Sure. It's about a guy who wakes up from a coma and finds out that he's the only man alive in a colony of women after after the end of the world. There's one guy and lots of women.
Interesting. And 73 minutes. You said you filmed that during different periods of lockdown. So what was that experience like?
Crazy. It was really crazy. I literally came up with the idea like on a Tuesday. I thought, well, I saw something that triggered the idea, and then wrote it Wednesday and Thursday, Friday afternoon. I contacted people I knew and said, "Hey, do you want to make a film?" And luckily, I've worked with enough, really good actors and really good people that they were like, "Yep, I'm in." So we shot 2 weeks later, and it was in the middle through that craziness. And then it's a thriller, it's not horror, and we shot it over 4 days, 4 nights. Actually, it's mostly at night, and we had actors in Florida, Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee. And no two actors were ever in the same place together. Everybody, is remote, except for like one tiny scene, but there was glass in between them, so it was okay.
Trista, you have another question?
I was wondering if the Scary Antics show in Hazmat was inspired by any real life show.
Oh yeah, Scare Tactics, yeah. Yeah, actually, the idea for the show, for the movie came, I had just had surgery and I was like just sitting around home, recovering, and they had a full day of Scare Tactics, like a marathon kind of thing. And I was watching there laughing my butt off, and I'm just like, man, I kept expecting somebody to if somebody's coming at me, I would punch or something. So I kept thinking, this could really go wrong. And so that's what sparked the idea for Hazmat, and the whole things really go wrong after they try to scare a guy.
I've not actually seen Scare Tactics. But...
Oh, it's hilarious. I don't know if they're still playing it, but it was really, really funny.
All right. Where can people follow your movies to see, when they'll be released and where they can find them?
Well, I'm Ms. MS Lou Simon, LOUSIMON, in all the social media, and then everything has its own. So I guess whitelotusmovies.com. We'll probably have all links for all the different social media pages.
Where did that name come from, White Lotus?
Well, I'm Buddhist. And in Buddhism, a white lotus is representative of creation and creativity. So when I started my company, I figured, why not? We're going to make a bunch of horror movies killing people. Why not use Buddhism as a starting point?
Yeah. Totally makes sense. Very cool. People should check out Agoraphobia. It's on Amazon, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And it should be on Tubi soon. I'm not really sure. They haven't given me a release date, but it should be on Tubi. And so you'll be able to stream it there for free. And Tubi pays people a lot better, filmmakers better. So just watch all your films there instead of watching on Amazon that doesn't pay crap.
Great. And I'm a fan of Tubi even before that, because a lot of cool, unique horror movies, a lot of independent horror movies that, aren't carried other places. And I don't care about a couple ads. That's totally fine by me.
Yeah. Probably because we grew up with them, right?
Right. Yeah. I grew up with a lot more ads than two, so it's fine. Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard that from other filmmakers that they're better for independent.
Way better. Yeah, way better. Amazon doesn't pay anything. It's terrible. It's like $0.01 for every hour. Really. So I mean, you literally have to stream. Millions of people have to stream for you to actually make any money on Amazon. But you know, they count on the fact that that's where people are going. You know, I mean, it's almost impossible to get on Netflix, and Netflix kind of rips off. Oh, I probably shouldn't say that. Never mind. But it's impossible to get on Netflix. It's very hard. So Amazon know that they're probably the only game in town for low budget, you know, indie films. So because of that, they can get away with murder. So, and so they do. I mean, they do not pay indie filmmakers at all.
Very good. Well, I will share the Tubi link when it's available.
You can't. That's a one drawback to Tubi. You can't share a link to your film directly. I mean, Tubi, if you're listening, please, can you please fix that? I mean, seriously, this is such a pain in the ass. Because all you can say is like go to Tubi TV and look for it.
Yeah. Interesting. We'll get on them about that.
Give them a call. You know them, Neal, don't you? Just call them up.
If Nasty Neal tells somebody, it will do no good whatsoever. But my mom calls Tubi or not Tubi. She thinks it's very cute. It is very cute. And my mom's a big horror movie fan.
Oh, good. Yeah. Now my mom isn't, but she'll watch mine only.
Well, that's good. That's good. Does she enjoy your movies?
Actually, her favorite is Agoraphobia.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she really likes that one. So she was excited when I told her it was finally being released in the US. But she'll watch it, but it's kind of funny to watch her while she's like the whole time. It's really funny. It's kind of cute, but all the time her thing is like, so how much longer are you going to keep doing that? Like she just wants her to be an attorney. That's it. She thinks I'm crazy. She really does. But
yeah, I love it. That's cool. Well, I'm glad she's still supportive though and watches it.
Yeah.
Even if she tells you to stop doing
Even if it's a phase, Lou.
I'll outgrow at any moment now.
Well, it's been very fun. It's great to have you back on.
Oh, it's so nice seeing you again.
Yeah, we should do this again sometime.
Absolutely. After 73 minutes, if you'll have me back, even though it's not horror. I don't know. Do you do thrillers?
Yeah, we. Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely thrillers.
Cool.
Yeah. As long as it's in the realm. As long as it's not like a romantic comedy or something. I think we're good.
No. I have written romantic comedy, but I doubt I'll ever make one. Nobody will ever hire me to direct that. I don't think. I'll be very surprised.
Your mom would probably like that, maybe. I don't know.
Much more, yeah, much more likely. Maybe then she'll support me.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Bye.